But have you guys been watching Shogun?
That's
really
another way.
well, because I mean, there's a number of shows.
Fucking
I wanted to
tagged
watch.
a million times
Yeah,
on Twitter.
yeah.
Everyone called me John Blackthorn.
I can't watch Shogun now without seeing your face. Everywhere.
I was a little like, whoa, he does kind of look like me a little bit. And then his fucking voice is so fucking stupid in the show.
Yeah.
He's putting on a voice a little bit in the show, and it's kind of obnoxious in the first episode. But get used to it.
Yeah.
But it's actually really fun. It's a really good show.
Yeah.
And he goes, "My name is John Blackthorn, and I want my men and my ship returned to me." And they just every the first episode is just them calling each other savages. He's like, "You savages, savages," and the Japanese people keep calling him a barbarian.
Why does he sound like Chris?
That is that what he sounds like?
It is.
Really?
That was actually a really good impression.
He's like, "I'm trying to find the Japans, and this is you in Portugal." It's really good. It's actually so good.
I've heard very good things about it.
Because I feel like the one thing that they've done so well is that they've turned translation into such a really cool way of doing storytelling. Yeah, like the way when being words are being translated in between characters, it tells so much that's left out. Yeah, it's so cool.
I think I'm sure there's been I'm sure there's been shows like this before, but I can't remember the last show that is a Western production, but is so heavily based on a completely different language, right? Because there are English-speaking people in it, like the John Blackthorn.
Well, the one weird thing I found is that like they all speak Japanese, but then when they're speaking English in the show, they're speaking Portuguese.
Yeah,
which is weird.
Yeah,
a little bit in my head, which took me a little bit to get used to, because you'd be like, "Oh, he speaks fluent Portuguese," and then you go, "All right, hello, my name is Connor," and you'd be like, "Right,
yeah."
But that's the only thing that was bothering me for a little bit.
That's the only thing. But because like I would say most of the dialogue is actually in Japanese,
like 80% Japanese dialogue.
Right.
And obviously the main character can't speak Japanese. At least he can't at the beginning. I don't know how proficient he gets later on in the series. I've only watched like 4 episodes, so but there's a lot of scenes that hinge on whether his words are being correctly translated to whoever he's trying to speak to.
Right.
And it was like, it's such an interesting dynamic that normally a lot of shows or movies just go past, which is just like the translation between two people that don't speak the same languages. There's this extra barrier of like trust with the translator themselves to really translate. And sometimes the person translating what the main guy is saying is like, okay, so the main guy is British, right? But a lot of people in Japan are Portuguese, and obviously the British and the Portuguese are at war with each other.
Yeah.
So there's this extra layer of, obviously the Portuguese doesn't exactly want to translate what the English guy is saying, because he's just fucking slagging them off and kind of
because at this time they didn't know about like everything else.
Yeah. So there's like,
it's like 1600s.
Yeah. So there's so many different layers going on between all the different factions, and it's such a well-written show about how it brings it all together, like the politics of like the Japanese side, and bringing this external factor of the English person. I hate to use the term Game of Thrones, but
that's what everyone's saying. They're like,
that's
it's like the next Game of Thrones.
It's like the next Game of Thrones.
It's like Game of Thrones in Japan. No, it's interesting because like I haven't watched Shogun yet, although I've heard so many good things about it from like Chris and like obviously just you guys just now. But like I recently watched a movie. It was actually a Martin Scorsese movie.
Okay. I wish you watched a movie.
I watched a movie.
Which one?
Called Silence.
Oh, okay. I thought you were about to say Killers of the Flower Moon. I was going to like fucking snooze at the Flower Moon.
No, I haven't watched that one yet. But Aki randomly found this movie by Martin Scorsese. Never heard of it up until this point, called Silence. Where it's got like Andrew Garfield, Adam Driver, Liam Neeson.
Oh, wow.
And it's about kind of a similar plot point, similar timeline where like the Portuguese first come to Japan to like introduce Christianity.
I know this movie. I've been meaning to watch this one.
Yeah, it's fucking brilliant. And it's kind of the same thing where it's like they have a bunch of like actual proper Japanese actors who, you know, most of the time only speak Japanese. And like, you know, because the whole thing's set in Nagasaki, they're all speaking in a Nagasaki dialect. And it's kind of the same thing where it's like, you know, when the Portuguese main character, Andrew Garfield's character, is like trying to talk to the Japanese like warlords, there's like, they, instead of just like speaking it and just like doing the whole movie magic where it's like, oh, somehow it's been like translated over, they like have like a proper translator character to like sit there in between to like talk and all of that to make sure that all the dialogue goes through properly to each other. And like just that little detail, kind of like, you know, what you just said, like it was Shogun, where it's like that subtle detail, the fact that like he kind of left that in just goes to show like, oh, there's actual attention to detail here, and it's not just like some movie magic bullshit. But yeah, if you, from the sounds of it, Shogun kind of gives me a similar vibe to that, so which is why I'm looking forward to it, because Silas is a fucking amazing movie, which I never heard of up until this point.
It's like, honestly, how far we've come to one of like the biggest TV productions this year being being a mostly subtitled piece of media. Because I remember what was the final push to get me to watch Shogun was it was Sydney's mum and dad messaging me being like,
really?
It wasn't that I was in it.
That actually actively made me not want to watch it, because I was just like, this is just a meme. I had found out about Shogun through trash taste memes, not through any critical person talking about it. It was basically through like shots of John Blackthorne on the trash taste Reddit being like, is this Connor? I didn't know Connor was in Shogun. And I'm like, the fuck is this? The 2024 Last Samurai? Like, well, what's going on?
Cool.
And then like, you know, I like knowing Sydney's parents, they are, you know, very, very old school. It was very, very hard to get them to watch anything subtitled. Not just because, you know, not because they have an aversion to it, just because a lot of times it was just like, I don't really feel like it. You know, a lot of times it's not that deep. People were just like, it's subtitles, I can't be fucked. Or that's what it used to be like. Until I guess Parasite won best movie at the Oscars.
And Squid Game was all over the world.
Oh yeah,
I think at the end of the day,
as well.
you know, it kind of helps that it's kind of, I guess, looks kind of like English from the get-go, and then when you get into it, you're like, hold on, now this is actually really compelling. So I think there are probably some people who probably didn't want to watch a subtitled show, but the show starts off in like English for like 2 minutes. And so I'm sure probably like some people, they were probably like, okay, hold on, this is pretty cool.
They tricked them into eating.
I think honestly sometimes there needs to be a dangling carrot, right? Like, because I remember the first time I got into anime, I really didn't want to watch it subbed, because I just never had done that before. So I was kind of not used to the idea, but Attack on Titan kind of made me be like, all right, hold on.
Was it Attack on Titan?
Attack on Titan was the first one that made me watch subbed.
Not Death Note? I thought it was Death Note.
No, Death Note, I watched dub. The Death Note dub's amazing.
Yeah, it's really good.
If I ever watch Death Note, I still watch the dub, because I think the dub is so good. They really knocked it out of the park. Even though I know that the Light Yagami is very famous, the Japanese voice actor.
Oh yeah, Miyano Mamoru.
But yeah, no, it's such a good show. I haven't finished it yet. I really want to though.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's also insane to think. Like I saw like statistics recently about, you know, you see some of like the top trending shows in the world right now, which obviously are like shows like Shogun. But you know, the talk on social media now, a lot of the times when you see the breakdowns about what shows are being talked about on social media, anime is like constantly up there now with like,
it's like, cool to like anime.
Well,
now,
it's you know, I think it's great as well that subtitles are, you know, at least for the younger generation, people growing up now, doesn't seem to be an issue at all.
No.
I mean, the Jujutsu Kaisen fan base is just fucking solo carrying so much. It's Jujutsu Kaisen and One Piece are just like up there right now.
I mean, big shows like that is what cracks the door open for a lot of people to get into anime. So you know, I'm more than happy when a bunch of normies come in. And I hate saying normie. It's so arbitrary.
What do you think is a normie? What defines a normie?
Someone who just watches just Jujutsu Kaisen.
Do you remember?
But I don't care. Like, I know people are like, oh, well, it's so annoying. No, it's like, you know, I said this when I was live streaming the other day. Like, anime fandoms are more split than ever.
Yeah.
Like someone who watches like Domestic Girlfriend, Rent-A-Girlfriend.
Why did you say that?
Because you are frankly just not watching the same kinds of like, you're not even remotely.
We are not the same.
Yeah, you are literally experiencing such a different like. But even then, like, I you know, when you talk to Japanese people, like when I go to bars and stuff, unless I go to like a manga or an otaku themed bar or something.
Yeah.
If I'm just talking to Japanese people, I'll be like, oh yeah, I like Zankyu no Terra. They'll be like, what the fuck is that? They'll be like, oh, what the hell is that? I'll be like, oh, I meant Shigeki no Kyojin. You know what I mean? Like, there's just there, even amongst like in Japan, where a lot of people think that everyone just watches every anime, which is just not true.
They really don't.
There's almost like if it doesn't get to Jujutsu Kaisen level, I feel like a lot of people in Japan just don't know about it unless they're really into anime.
Yeah, definitely.
And I feel like that's like, you know, you are just having a completely different experience.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. It's whatever.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's cool that it's gotten big enough now where it's kind of like gaming, where like someone who mobile games is not the same as somebody who builds their PCs and plays like, you know, Steam games all day or whatever. You know, it's just, you are having a wildly different experience,
different levels.
But I think you can be called a gamer. I don't care. You know, I'm not like mobile gamers are not real gamers. I don't give a fuck. It's whatever. I also watched Oppenheimer again in cinemas.
Again
in cinemas in IMAX this time.
Is
in the Japanese
in Japan.
Oh yeah.
I also just wanted to see what the vibe was like.
What was the vibe like?
People were really fucking into it. It was full.
I mean, yeah, it's a great fucking movie.
It was full.
Yeah.
I also really liked it in IMAX because last time I watched it in 35 millimeter, which is great, but the screen was definitely a lot smaller. So IMAX, I was definitely like but it was really good.
Well, because unlike what a lot of like publications were saying, a lot of Japanese people really wanted to see this movie.
Yeah, there was no. I'd seen as well. People were posting this thing around. At least in Tokyo, there was no like warning.
Yeah,
I know that on social media, like a warning was going around, being like, "Warning: this contains scenes of nuclear explosions."
Yeah, but there isn't a single scene that's set in Japan in that movie.
No, there isn't. But that was one of the main criticisms actually. Is that to be fair, they are these are people who I think they'd shown it early, which I don't know why they'd shown it early to people who were like working with the like heritage centers in like Hiroshima and like, the museum and stuff, and their main complaint was that it didn't show the destruction,
right?
Because in their sense that almost like absolved the viewers of having to like. Come to terms with what the bomb did, right? But I think then people argued as well that it was like, well, it's meant to be from only Oppenheimer's perspective, and that's the
also
fact that
there's
he
literally
didn't,
hundreds of films that cover
Yeah,
that
there's a
side
lot-
of the
there's a lot.
story anyway, right?
and I think if you go into the film thinking that it's just about this thing, which I guess it is in some senses, but it's mainly about how this man is a very delusional, but very smart man and following his journey, and it was really compelling. Even watching the second time round, I thought I was going to be a lot more bored, but I still really enjoyed it.
It's
really
just a
amazing.
great film.
Such a good film. Such a good film.
Oh, finally watched Dune 2 as well.
Nice.
Have you
Hell
seen
yeah.
it as well?
Did you watch it in theaters?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
good.
Okay.
You had to, man.
This time I was like, I gotta watch this in theaters.
It was good, right?
This was like after I had like the bike fucking.
Nice.
The bike nightmare.
But it was so good, right?
Yeah.
It's fucking so good.
After watching it, I got curious because I was like, I saw how many books there were available, and I'd heard like the director, he was like, no, I'm only doing 3 films. I'm only doing 3 films.
Yeah, because
I'm
it's
like,
fucking weird.
yeah, I didn't realize how weird,
super weird.
it got.
Yeah.
Were you aware of this going into the films?
I've read all the books.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
Okay.
so I know.
Even the one,
How old were you?
I
the
was
fifth one?
Yeah, I've read all the Frank Herbert books. So I've read the
Because his
first.
son took over, right?
Yeah,
And then-
I haven't read any of his son's books, but all the original Frank Herbert books I read when I was like in high school, I think. Yeah, they get weird. after around Children of Dune, it gets like okay,
Like
Frank was
wacko,
on
yeah.
something, bro.
He was on that spice, man.
He was on that spice, bro.
He was on his own supply. At
It
that
was the
point.
50s. So
It was.
I mean,
Doesn't surprise me.
But they're amazing books, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to if they're gonna do the second book. Second book is also fantastic. So
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I was like, okay, this is like I watched it in cinemas and I'm like, yes, I can't imagine experiencing this not in cinemas.
Yeah,
especially
it's so
like the biggest thing that's caught me off guard was actually not only like the visuals, but like just the sound quality
Sounds
as well.
Oh, the
so
sound
good.
design is incredible.
Especially when they use like the voice.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, and like whenever someone uses the voice, you just hear like so many different fucking layers that you don't.
Oh, sorry.
Drink the water of life. It's like my chair just starts shaking.
Yeah.
It's so cool. I think it just as well, like the story's so compelling, and
Yeah.
he just understands religion so well, and the way it's used in the movie is so cool. It's like it's not to like demean it in any way, but like to show how it can be used as a tool.
Yeah.
Do you think it felt like an old story?
No, not at all.
Oh, no.
But I think that's what makes like that's what makes certain works just so timeless, and like stuff like Shakespeare so timeless in a sense. Because like, I mean, Shakespeare feels old not because it's old, but because of like the setting it is in.
No, it's because of the
language.
the way it's written.
Yeah, but like the themes and like when you watch like when you read of Shakespeare, or if you like watch any media based on it, you're like, damn, this story is pretty fucking good.
No,
like,
yeah.
There's a reason why it holds up so goddamn
I think
well.
at the core of it all, like once you get past the language and like the old setting, like I agree. Like the core themes of the stories are very timeless. Like people today can still very much relate to like you know a Romeo and Juliet, for example. And I think that's why Dune just feels like such a classic story. And you know, like back when it was written, like you know, my dad grew up reading those stories, and he was like, yeah, it was so incredibly ahead of its time, just with like
it is way ahead of its time.
so ahead of its time. And like, you know, it shows that it's like it's one of the most like, you know, ripped off of sci-fi stories, you know, that's ever been written, right? And the fact that you can make a movie about it 60 years after it was made and people still being like, this is fucking insane, just goes to show like, yeah,
Well, that's why it was
timeless story.
That's
bro.
why it was goated when it came
It's
out.
a goated series, yeah.
I know there's always like comparisons. People are always like, yeah, he like Frank Herbert is like to sci-fi what Tolkien is to like fantasy.
Fantasy, yeah.
But yeah, it did make me hype for Lord of the Rings again. For like two. me and Chris were quoting Lord of the Rings the entire cycle. I don't know
Really?
what. I think watching that, you're like, you just get hungry for more worlds that are like of that
Like
level.
expansive like
Yeah,
that, yeah.
and then you just think like, God damn. Every time you just sit, well, you haven't watched Lord of the Rings, right? You're a fraud.
No, I have. Excuse
fraud.
me.
He watched a little bit of it in
Excuse
Hawaii,
me.
remember?
Excuse me. I watched the third film.
That's crazy that
with
you would like.
you guys.
That's crazy.
With you guys. Excuse me.
I just can't believe that like you haven't watched it.
Yeah,
It's
that's
it's
wild to me.
It's like it's like in terms of it's like Dune. It's like Dune, like, in terms of like the expansiveness of the world and how fucking good it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
can
so
imagine
fucking
that.
good.
It's so good.
Watching Dune did make me think. It was just like, because it did make me think. When do you think the last time we had like a truly original story? Like, how can I say this? Because
in what genre? Like in sci-fi?
I guess like, okay, so Lord of the Rings was obviously insanely influential, right?
Sure.
To the point where you look at a fantasy and you're like, so there's so many fantasy elements that have taken inspiration from, you know, the Tolkien-esque fantasy vibe and the races and everything like that. And you think to yourself, you know, you think the same with Dune, how much it inspired sci-fi, and you think how many different sci-fi stories got inspired by some of the different ideas that were presented in Dune. I mean, even like, you know, something like, you know, Star Wars with like Jedis and like, you know, Jedi mind tricks, for example, being influenced by, you know, originally like The Voice and stuff like that. And you're like, well, you look at Dune and you're like, when this first came out, these ideas were like totally original and mind-blowing to the point where you think, has anyone even thought of the ideas that were presented in this book before?
It's like flaming hot Cheetos after Cheetos. It's like mind blowing, game changing. Who thought of this?
and
Didn't quite get that.
It's like you're like, how can we ever go back to Cheetos?
Oh, that's true. That is true.
How can we ever degrade from this?
and yeah.
Shit, he's right.
I am right. We didn't know chips could taste that good.
I can never eat Cheetos again.
Yeah, and it just made me think, man, this has been this influential and it's still relevant this many decades later. When was the last time I saw something that, I guess, has there been a piece of media that's come out in my lifetime that is going to be as influential, as original as something like a Dune, a Lord of the Rings? I mean, is it even possible? You know, it's
I'm sure there will be.
The Avengers. I'm just kidding.
I mean, arguably more influential right now.
But will it last another 10, 20 years? Who knows?
Yeah.
And even then, it's not it's not like a period of its peace or anything. But like,
there's I think there's a difference between like Pokemon? A trend and like something like a piece of media
like a
that's
timeless
like truly
thing, right? Like a cult classic.
Influential. You know, because like trends follow money for one. They follow like money. Whatever.
Would you consider then like a cult classic to be kind of in the same caliber?
What do you mean?
Like in the sense that, a cult classic was, could be made like, 30, 40 years ago, but people still openly talk about it, and even the younger generation find out about it because of its cult classic status, and then the talk of that cult classic just keeps going on forever and ever and ever, right? Like
what are you talking about?
Like
I know you have a
Pulp
movie in
Fiction,
mind.
for example.
Okay.
Right? Or like any of like the early Tarantino films, right? Like people today.
Is Pulp Fiction influential?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I don't know, because I see Tarantino films, and Tarantino films are so Tarantino. You know what I mean?
He is influential. Are you kidding?
I guess to me, like I don't really see anyone really encapsulating what makes, or like doing a Tarantino film as well as like Tarantino does.
Well, I think that's what makes Tarantino so good, is that no one can really replicate it, for instance.
Yeah, it's just such a unique style.
Yeah.
Obviously he's an influential filmmaker in the sense of like, he is very, very good with some of the dialogue scenes and just, natural dialogue, and especially in Pulp Fiction, the way like a story is presented. But I can't really think of any other films that I watched that I can think of off the top of my head that I'm just like, oh yeah, this feels like a Tarantino film. I can't really think of anything. I don't know, because everything I think of is like, oh, this is so. Every Tarantino film is so uniquely Tarantino. You know what I mean?
No, I get that.
It's such a guy conversation. Just sitting here. This is what dudes do at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
They'll be like,
the girls are like, I bet he's cheating on me. It's like, what makes a Tarantino film a Tarantino film?
Why do guys just love Tarantino films?
Let's discuss.
Why is Kill
Because we
Bill
just
so
love
good?
feet, man.
Yeah,
we just fucking love feet.
No.
Okay, like I remember I kind of had this feeling, right? Because like, as a Tarantino fan, I totally agree. It is very difficult to find that Tarantino vibe from a non-Tarantino work, right? But sometimes you can catch like whiffs of it, where it's like, it might just be pure coincidence, or maybe the Tarantino vibe is like some kind of like formula to it that like just someone just happened to figure out, right? Like, I know this is gonna be weirdest like comparison right now, but like I felt the Tarantino vibe when I watched Durarara.
Or because they split it the way.
Not only because of like the same story from the multiple like things, perspectives rather, that all coincide with one another, but also just the fact that like simple dialogue exchanges eventually keep building up and up and up into a batshit insane conclusion.
I can see that. I can see that, I guess, but I don't know. There's something about Tarantino dialogue that is just
it's unmatched.
So insane.
Yeah.
It's like
only Tarantino can do like a 15-minute segment of two dudes talking about foot massages. Like no one else can write that.
Yeah, I mean that's just he has such a deep understanding of like just conversation. And like what is like a real conversation sounds like. But how to then also cut out the aspects of real conversation that don't add to characterization or story.
Yeah.
That's why it's so good.